When it comes to writing, there are a lot of elements that people need to keep track of in order to tell a successful story. You can have an interesting adventure to tell people, but it might fall by the wayside because nobody likes the characters. Or have wonderful characters that are stuck in a world that doesn't really fit them. Believe it or not, it takes a lot more work than a lot of people think when it comes to making something that can satisfy on all levels, and sometimes not even the best are able to do it consistently. This was one of my major thoughts when I decided to revisit one of my old favorite franchises, a spacefaring show that I would have claimed once upon a time to be better than the likes of Star Wars and Star Trek, as we go into the world building and storytelling of the anime Outlaw Star. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, I am your ever-friendly Pokeprof, and welcome back to Fascinating Fiction. So, as per normal for my show, a quick primer for those of you who aren't familiar with Outlaw Star. Created back in 1996 by Takahiko Ito, Outlaw Star is a manga series detailing the adventures of Gene Starwind, a young man living on a colonized planet known as Sentinel-3. It starts off as a simple series about him and his partner, Jim Hawking, working odd jobs for their business that's designed to take just about any job, when the call for adventure comes where both Gene and Jim end up finding themselves going into space while having to deal with space pirates and their goals of obtaining a legendary treasure known as the Galactic Ley Line. What follows is a combination space opera / space western series that has us following Gene's path towards the ley line and all the characters he meets along the way. This was one of the bigger franchises that the cartooning block on Cartoon Network Toonami aired, and it, alongside Big O and Gundam Wing, became a fan favorite for many kids of that era for having actions, explosions, and overall having a different flavor for an anime than what folks were used to thanks to the likes of Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon. It's a series that I love, and I rewatched it recently specifically so I could talk about it on this show. But it was as I watched it again for the first time in almost a decade that I realized that there were some elements in the series that didn't work as well as I remember them being. And then it was towards the end that I realized it. Outlaw Star is a fantastic example of world building being superior to storytelling in a franchise when you look at it as a whole. That whole bit I mentioned before with the pirates and the Galactic Ley Line, that's all something that's mentioned or shown off in the first 2 episodes of the series, with the second 2 episodes being mostly focused on Gene getting his spaceship and introducing the other major character of the series, Melfina. So you'd think with this kind of introduction of a big treasure and the exposure of Gene's character when it comes to, I prefer the easy way of getting rich quick, that they'd be instantly setting out to look for the ley line, right? Well, no, that's not the case. In fact, Gene never seriously goes searching for any information in the series until the episode Grave of the Dragon, which is episode 21, out of a 26 episode anime. That's right, our main character, who is flat out given a spaceship that is designed specifically for seeking out and getting to the Galactic Ley Line, doesn't bother to go and actually progress towards that goal until the tail end of the series. Instead, it's a lot of misadventures with Gene, Jim, and Melfina. It's as the episodes go on that we notice the fact that despite there being no action from the main cast in order to find the ley line, we see people talking about it, asking questions about it, and little things here and there that are dropped throughout the series. One of the major characters that ends up joining Gene's crew, a cat girl by the name of Aisha Clan, is completely focused on finding out information about the treasure. The pirates that used to own the spaceship that Gene now uses have their entire focus and goals being on finding and getting into the ley line. It just doesn't matter to our main character until the series is close to being over. The same thing could be said for a lot of the other things that are introduced. both character and idea-wise, in the fact that they're just kind of left by the wayside when it comes to being important for the actual story later on. One of the examples I would give would be Twilight Suzuka, one of the other major characters of the series and my personal favorite. We're told about how she's this expert assassin, how she's known for killing anyone and everyone once she decides to kill them, and about how her skill with the blade is unmatched. And then Jean defeats her easily and makes it so that instead of going after his friend as per her contract, she has to go after Jean. Now, part of this is just a virtue of being the main character and allowing him to establish himself as a capable hero, which I understand. But it's something that you see kind of happen a lot through this series, where Suzuka's challenged a lot more than someone you would think a master assassin would be, often defeated to try and make the current villain of the day feel more powerful. That's actually some of the biggest problems I think we've got when it comes to this series. We're told a lot of things up front from a deep voice narrator who goes on to explain some core elements that we need to know. But maybe half of what we're given is actually important for the given episode, if that.
The history of racing in space goes back many years. In every age, survival of the fittest has been the rule, no matter how advanced a civilization might be.
In fact, this is a bit of a lore dump in each episode, which you could actually argue is against it being world building in and of itself. Part of what he goes into comes back in later parts of the story, such as dealing with the leader and hierarchy of the pirates, but then there's things like the swimsuit episode.
A history colored by legend. It began over a century ago with 3 pioneers.
Yeah, it's kind of there just to be exposition. Honestly, the best storytelling in the entire series that we get is about Jean's past. We're given this reason for why Jean doesn't like going into space to the point of being sick, and it mostly comes down to him being attacked by pirates, which resulted in the death of his father. Among those ships that attacked him is a golden ship that is piloted by the McDougal brothers. Except outside of the proper introduction about Jean trying to learn just why they attacked their ship, there isn't anything that follows up after that. Like, we get him hating the two, but we actually never get to see any resolution about it. We never find out why the McDougals attacked Jean's ship back then, outside of they'll accept all sorts of jobs so long as the price is right, and their own investment into what happens throughout the series doesn't matter in the end. Like, the younger of the McDougal brothers, Harry, he's a non-character at the start of the series, legit just being a bloodthirsty crook.
Die, die, die!
And yet he ends up being interested in Melfina and goes on about how they're meant to be, making him out to be such a bigger deal than he really is when it comes to their relationship. When at most, these two have met all of 3 times in the actual series, 4 if you're counting the time that Harry was hacking into Melfina's systems. But despite all this, we get things like the in-depth detail about what alien species exist. From the Katarl to the Saurians, there's actually a lot of building up to what they're like, how they act, and the worlds they come from. There's also things like the prison planet, detailing how it functions and what kind of world it is, with its shape explaining why it's a death sentence to be stuck there. There's a lot of interesting ideas and setups that are there to really flesh out the universe, but we don't really get to explore them, as instead we're focusing on having a strongest woman in the universe episode, where we try to make sure that Jean's gay friend Fred doesn't have to marry a woman whom he promised to marry if she won that contest for 5 years in a row. Now, this isn't to say the fact that the story isn't good. More the fact that it has a lot of promises that it doesn't really deliver on in a way that feels satisfying or makes sense. It would be like if we found out that the reason for the creation of this epic monster of epicness in a series is all because of money. Sure, it's a reason, but it feels poor in comparison to, say, the scientist creating the monster is doing so because he's also wanting to use the technology to recreate his dead daughter. It adds more depth to the character's backstory and makes the story more interesting than just money. I also think in some cases the voice acting and translation also don't do the series many favors. At some points, it feels like the characters are just repeating the same thing over and over.
You're gonna just keep running away?
Just keep running away?
And then at other points, you've got characters who have huge bits of dialogue that are just shoved into a single scene.
So I camouflaged it well, if I do say so myself. It's an incredible piece of work that would cost a small fortune if it was made by someone else.
It makes it really hard sometimes to figure out what's important, what isn't, and what's actually going to be used throughout the rest of the series. Outlaw Star is, in the end, something that I think could be best described as a spacefaring Dungeons & Dragons campaign. It's got the world building, characters, and interesting ideas to offer a really wonderful story, and unfortunately our players care more about goofing off and drinking a few beers than really taking that setting seriously. Sure, it's a lot of fun, but it's something that I thought could have been taken a bit further with a bit more seriousness. And yet he ends up being interested in Menphilia. Yes, he's interested in Menphilia from the award-winning Final Fantasy XIV. God lord. I'm actually going to save this for a frickin' blooper at the end. Enjoy, folks.